Hi there! You're invited to listen to an exclusive excerpt from the next episode that I'll be publishing on Sunday. My next guest is absolutely fascinating, and this is just a teaser of what you can expect from our discussion. Enjoy listening, and I'll see you on Sunday for the full episode.
Welcome to Finscale, a podcast created by Solène Niederkorn, shedding light on innovation in finance, banking, and insurance.
Pioneering carbon removal with Frontier. Nan Ransohoff, Head of Climate at Stripe.
There are two main levers that we can pull. We can stop emitting in the first place, often called emissions reduction, or two, we can pull CO2 already in the atmosphere and ocean and store that somewhere permanently. The world is going to need to do a huge amount of both. Roughly the split, 90% of the effort should focus on emissions reduction. We will not solve climate change without attention on this piece. But because of the we've waited so long and because certain industries are quite hard to decarbonize, we will also, in addition to emissions reduction, need to do a lot of carbon removal.
It's been a long time since I had in mind to have Stripe on Finscale, but I wanted to cover a topic you wouldn't expect. We are indeed going to discuss carbon removal. To talk about this, I sit with Nan, who is the head of climate at Stripe and is also the head of Frontier. You're about to discover a woman truly dedicated to her mission. She tells us how Stripe has launched Frontier, aiming to purchase hundreds of millions of dollars in carbon removal between now and 2030. Together, we can go further. This is Nan's battle cry. We discuss how Frontier aims to address the challenges faced by the traditional offset market and improve measurement and verification methods for carbon removal. We delve into the concepts of pre-purchase and offtake agreements and understand the philosophy behind this initiative that is gathering more and more actors around it. Enjoy the show! Hello everyone. Hi Nan.
Hi.
It's great to have you here on Finscale, and this is the first time you join us, so it's wonderful for me to have such an important topic to discuss with you, climate and carbon removal, and I know it's a subject that is very important for you. Before diving deep into it, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. My name is Nan Ransohoff. I run climate at Stripe and also lead an AMC called Frontier.
Okay, and prior to Stripe, you have a great experience also in scale-ups like Uber, Neuro, and other great names like this?
Exactly. I spent a lot of my time, most of my career in the private sector, and most of that working on different pieces of the climate puzzle from companies like Opower and Nest and Uber, trying to get more people into fewer cars with Uber Pool. And so this is really sort of where my interest and passion lies around how do we decarbonize the global economy more quickly.
Okay, great. So as I said to you, it's the first time you join. It's also the first time that I'm also dealing with Stripe. And it was interesting for me to understand why there is such an importance for Stripe to move in the climate direction and carbon removal. So maybe before understanding Stripe Climate and Frontier, I would be interested to have your opinion and see what we need to do to tackle climate change. And can you talk about the need to reduce these emissions and remove carbon from the atmosphere? It's a wide question, but it's, I think, important for the audience.
It is. And, we've learned from scientists is that in order to avoid the worst effects of climate change, we need to get global emissions from around 50 gigatons of CO2 equivalents every single year down to net zero by 2050. There are two main levers that we can pull. We can stop emitting in the first place, often called emissions reduction, or two, we can pull CO2 already in the atmosphere and ocean and store that somewhere permanently. The world is going to need to do a huge amount of both. Roughly the split, 90% of the effort should focus on emissions reduction. We will not solve climate change without attention on this piece. But because of the we've waited so long and because certain industries are quite hard to decarbonize, we will also, in addition to emissions reduction, need to do a lot of carbon removal. And we're particularly far behind on the second, in large part because most of the world didn't realize we were going to need to do as much as we now know we do until the 2018 IPCC report came out.
Mm-hmm. And what does carbon removal actually look like? Because we hear a lot of initiatives. Can you share with us some examples of technologies?
Carbon removal, is a phrase that encompasses a very broad and diverse set of technologies. I'll give you a couple examples. One is called direct air capture. They look like giant fans sucking in a bunch of air. They find the 412 particles of CO2 from the other million air particles, condense those, and then often inject them underground into, say, basalt, where it will mineralize once it gets down there. There's another company that's called Running Tide. This is growing kelp in the open ocean and sinking it. So, plants capture CO2 naturally through photosynthesis, and companies like Running Tide are taking advantage of the fact that, plants do this already for free, and then using storage at the bottom of the ocean, the proverbial desert floor of the ocean, to store that biomass. And then another example is a company called Charm Industrial. They are taking waste biomass like corn stover, which would otherwise re-emit the CO2 that the leaves had captured. They're pyrolyzing it. So they heat it up really quickly without oxygen, turn it into bio-oil, and then inject that bio-oil into oil wells to essentially put oil underground. These are just a couple of approaches that we're seeing, but what's really exciting is we're starting to see many more companies get started, and the diversity of those approaches continues to grow.
Mm-hmm. And what are the main challenges? I'm thinking of finding customers, and when we compare with other technologies, it seems less easy. Can you say a few words about that?
So the interesting thing about carbon removal is it doesn't have a natural customer.
Now that you've heard an excerpt from the upcoming episode on Sunday, make sure you stay tuned and connected so you don't miss a beat.